if everybody who's not Danielle or Elliot should probably go on mute now, so we can make sure we can keep it nice and quiet. We will have the chat log is available for everybody, and I will monitor the chat log. So if you have any additional questions or comments based on what Danielle or Elliot are asking, feel free to put it into the chat and I'll monitor it. Maybe I'll jump in and ask your question to begin. So just to go over our agenda for today for everybody who's attending the meeting, we'll have Elliot Wolf and Danielle Harvey from Peanut Butter Publishing. We'll go through that, and then when we're done with that, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the up and coming meetings. We'll be talking about press kits and press releases, launching your book, using Facebook groups, and then we'll talk a little bit about podcasting that will come up later in the year. And then we'll ask Joel and John, I don't know if John is on today, about the anthologies that are currently under development, but we'll go ahead and ask them then at the end of the meeting. Elliot and Danielle, you guys don't have to stay all the way through. So when we're done, feel free to release you into the wild. You don't have to watch, but you're free to stay if you would like. So okay. Not a big deal. So I'll let everybody know we got about 11 people on the call now. I saw a couple additional people jump in. Arena, Sydney. Very nice to see you guys here today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today we have Elliot and Danielle from Peanut Butter Publishing. Please throw your any comments you have into the chat log, and we'll go ahead and get started here. I think maybe just to begin, if Elliot and Danielle, if you guys could just maybe say who you are, the company you represent, talk a little bit about Peanut Butter Publishing and where it sits in the industry, and maybe just tell us what you guys do. Maybe it's just an introduction.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, this is Elliot Wolf. Danielle, if you have anything that you want to interrupt me with, feel free.
Okay.
But I guess my claim to fame is that I believe I'm the oldest small publishing company in America. I've been doing this for 49 years. I've published over 1,500 titles. I believe I have about 6.5 million books in print totally. And people come to us when they want the very best in self-publishing. I believe I've worked in every conceivable genre that you can think of. I've got about 20, 24, 25 books that we've had translated into about 14 different languages. We've sold rights on occasion to different books. The only thing I haven't really done is sold the movie rights to any of the manuscripts, although I did have one where we sold an option to do that. Basically, I have about 70% of the books I do are nonfiction, and about 30% are fiction. And fiction, of course, is exceedingly difficult because it's so hard to promote. And if you look at the overall package, or I don't like using that word, if you look at the overall situation of publishing a book, it really turns out that only about a third of the project, the entire project, is in writing the book, writing the manuscript. About 2/3 of a successful project is to getting out there and letting the world know that your book exists. And if you don't have that angle, then how are people going to know about you? So with all of that, Danielle, why don't you turn it, or I'll turn it over to you, and you can tell them what you do as a superb editor.
Hi, everyone. I'm the senior executive editor at Peanut Butter Publishing. I have been for quite a few years now. And I also work in, more manuscript review or project review, just to, like the authors we take on, we tend to only, encourage them to go with us if we see the project having good potential for success. So even in the initial consultation, we always talk about, who did you write this book for? What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Because our number one priority is just making sure that we accomplish the goals set out by the author in whatever size that may be, and then kind of see what kind of tools we can provide them with in order to go down that path with a lot more ease and a lot less surprises. So my apologies on our website. It is being updated. I just finished rewriting a lot of it last week to submit to our team because we are kind of trying to communicate that we are now considered an independent press. We were calling ourselves self-publishers before, but the definition of self-publishing has changed so much now that there's a lot more power in the author's court that there never used to be. The difference being that self-published authors do all of the work themselves. And from what I understand, I believe that a lot of you have done a lot of that in the past. As an independent press, it's kind of the middle ground to where you're hiring a team of professionals to, you have your editor and your layout designer, and we send it to our book printers and kind of use our resources in order to produce the book. And traditional publishers being on the other end of buying your manuscript from you and giving you compensation in the form of a royalty or an advance or both. So our kind of claim to fame being is that we're a little bit boutique in that we really value author control and making sure that, what you're setting out to do is that you feel that it's truly yours, and we're just trying to get it out there in the best form possible. Because we find that, the more intimate you are with your content, more confident you are going to be putting it out there in the world in front of readers and actually reaching those readers. And I did see later on this question sheet a little bit about publicity and promotion. And I know Elliot touched on that a bit on establishing your audience and just always keeping that in mind. We do have those tools in the form of a publicist and distribution and things like that. But the more confident an author is and the more work they're willing to put into, getting their work out there, the more success that we see. So I kind of went in a roundabout way. I just wanted to kind of define what we are and kind of our resources and our approach. And yes, my title is an editor, but I find that with authors, when you work with them from the very beginning, from when it's just a Word document and to the very end when their book's on the market, I tend to stick around for quite a while just because I become so familiar with the content. But yeah, so there's my general definition.
So great. That was really great. A lot of great information. Do you guys tend to work on just the fee-based
Again, I've
model?
lost you.
I'm sorry. Do you guys tend to work primarily on the fee-based model, or do you guys take a cut of royalties? How do you guys work with the author, going forward? Do you have some type of royalty structure? How does that work for you guys?
Wait, are you as for eBay structured or traditional?
No,
Our
I
pay
think
structure
just
or
for you
compensation
guys.
structure.
Yeah, for you guys in general. Yes.
Electronic books are they're useful. They have made a huge splash in the market. Electronic books now have leveled off, and traditional books have now regained the prominence of in the publishing world. You've got to remember there's two sides to this publishing world. There's the fiction side, which is one way of proceeding, and the nonfiction side, which is another direction. If you have a fiction side, I've got a whole lot less options. But if I'm going to a nonfiction side, then I can usually I can usually really focus on the audience that you're trying to write to. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm just maybe what I was trying to ask was, does Peanut Butter Publishing acquire the rights to the author's work, or do you guys are you more of a fee-based structure that we pay to help us solve those initial problems, and then we go off and do our own marketing? Like, what's how does it typically work? You know, what's the average experience for an author who comes to you?
Okay, so the first thing that I ask an author, and I've got to get it very, very clear in my mind so I understand, is what is his or her goal? Why have they spent, my average author has between 2 years and 8 years of their life invested in a manuscript? What are they trying to achieve? And if it's just to make money, then I always just say that we're not the house for you, because you've got to have other reasons. This is not a the model, the structure of where you start out is it's got to have volume in order for you to break even and then start to make money in a um, self-published environment.
Okay.
In a published environment, uh, then you have to have, um, you just have to hope that you earn enough money for your royalties.
Okay. So maybe
Yeah,
just to clarify, you guys don't take any royalties. The author.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's maybe I was just not
yeah.
understanding.
Danielle, you want to address some of this?
As far as where the money goes?
Well, maybe just
Well,
I think a couple of our authors were asking just how do you guys don't necessarily acquire books like a traditional publishing house. You work with
right.
the author on a
Right,
fee
very
structure.
rarely.
Okay.
We don't tend to advertise that, but every once in a while we'll act as an agent or act as a traditional press um, on special circumstances. But most of the time, um, you know, the money goes towards the development of the book and everything that comes with that, being editing, layout design,
Got it.
copyright, printing, all of that stuff. And then so the upfront cost for how ours is like, we're not the cheapest in the world, but
Mhm.
after that, the author does collect 100% of what they sell.
Got it. Okay.
So the reaching a break even point tends to come a lot quicker, since we don't take that royalty,
Mhm.
and that's actually one of our goals as a press is to do whatever we can to make sure they at least reach that, and then so they can begin making profit a lot quicker. And then what the real money is made is if the book sells out and is reprinted, because we don't need to do a lot of the big stuff again. We don't need to edit it again, don't need to design it again. We just need to print it again. So then the unit cost goes significantly lower.
Okay.
Yeah, in general, that's how it works.
Okay, great. So you said you guys are shifting from kind of the self-publishing uh, definition to an indie publishing. Could you maybe talk a little bit about your, honest opinion of the self-publishing industry and why maybe you guys are rebranding to indie publishing? What does that mean? Should we not go that route? Should authors not go the self-publishing route? Maybe just talk a little bit about that if you could.
Two things I'd like to address. Um, Self-publishing. This is not a science; it's an art,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes an entire team. I mean, you're competing with people who do nothing but specific elements in the publishing world. So you've got book designers, you've got editors, you've got proofreaders, you've got all these people that are experts in the different segments that make up a a manuscript, a book. And so it's really important that we get the best possible bring together so that we can compete. There are 1,000,001 vanity publishers out there who will take your work and they don't care if they edit it or if they do edit it. There's usually somebody who uh, isn't extremely proficient in what they're doing. They don't have a lot of experience. And so that's where you get the bad reputations because the products that they put out there compared to professional material is embarrassing. I mean, it's not what a lot of people can be proud of. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, we
Yeah.
even amongst our own members here, we like to push high quality and everything. You know, echoing
Yeah.
a lot of your comments that there are concerns that you don't want to look amateur and you don't want to look that, and obviously you don't want the quality to be low. Absolutely. Maybe as a question, we know you have concern around the editing and the cover and the look, and the content has to be of high quality. Is there anything else that maybe you could tell our authors what we can do in our as authors to be taken seriously by consumers, other authors, publishing houses? What can we do to kind of up our game so that we get visibility by you guys or other small presses or customers? Is there something that we can be doing ourselves to improve that?
Some of the smartest authors who I've had the luxury of interacting with professionally really realize what and how they want to promote their manuscript so that when they're writing the manuscript, they already put in angles that will appeal to promoting their work.
So are you talking about you're talking about a general understanding of the genre that you're targeting with your book? Is that what you're referring to?
General understanding and specifically thinking about the reviewers. What does a reviewer look for in your manuscript? What do they want to see? And if you can give them an angle, a built-in angle, it makes your life all the better.
Okay. Maybe to piggyback on that question, we had a COVID-related question with the turbulent times. Has there been genre changes that you've seen that publishers or yourself or industry individuals are looking for different genres? Like, for example, you're not going to sell a post-apocalyptic virus book right now because everybody's living it. Or should I go back and edit my post-apocalyptic book to add in toilet paper hoarding as part of it? What are we looking at right now with the current environment that we're seeing? Is there a change there?
Okay, so you're talking about fiction books?
Yeah, it's, overwhelming majority of our authors are fiction writers.
Yeah.
So yeah, yes.
So I find that if you're talking about contemporary fiction, then you've got fiction that if it's going to take you 2 years to write, if we started, no, let me go back. If we started in the year 2018 to write about this environment that we're in now, and you have a book that talks about shortages of toilet paper and things like that, then this book, I promise you, will be very, very successful. You'll be able to get a lot of publicity because you're at the right place at the right time with it. So,
has anybody seen, like, maybe the question that I'm reading from is regarding has there been a change in genres that are popular right now that you've seen on your side that maybe could inform some of our authors, whether it's nonfiction or fiction? based on the current times? Like, are people not going to fantasy related books and going more towards romance, or have you seen a shift in the
No.
buy?
Almost all the categories are up proportionately because people have a lot more time on their hands to read, and that it's whatever category you're interested in. So if you're interested in westerns, they're doing very well. Right now, it's a time
If
for
anything,
a lot.
there has been some increase in more social commentary
Oh,
books.
Okay.
On social and political commentary, I've seen a little bit of an increase. And
Is that traditionally nonfiction, or are you seeing that social commentary coming into the type of books that the fiction books that are being targeted, what genre they're targeting?
I mean, a little bit of a blend in the sense it'll be, this is what I see happening, and this is kind of my analysis on what's happening. Or we'll see a little, specifically with America, just kind of books on different systems. Like we recently published a book on the American healthcare system, and one of our Black authors published his 5th book with us, which we strangely started writing before BLM really took off in the US. But so we see a little bit like that, but we get a pretty even distribution. We're just kind of, our volume has increased since now people, like Elliot said, have had the time to really decide whether they want to make a commitment to this. Yeah, generally it's pretty even. Seen everything from children's books, cookbooks, lots of memoir, family history, and then general fiction.
Okay, so we do have a couple memoir writers. We do see a lot of memoir authors come into our group periodically. Do you have any general statements around memoirs or people who write memoirs, things that they should be considering, when trying to get published or trying to write their book? Is there something that they could think about now as they write those books?
If there is a point of focus, will help, because a lot of people say, well, why should I care about your memoir? Well, there tends to be, beyond your family and friends, there should be a point of focus, whether we have a world traveler or a battle with addiction, or just something else that can be more applied to a specific group. Or we have one recently that has to do with eating disorders, and doesn't have to, 100% be centralized around a single thing, but just something that can help you break beyond, that family and friend wall, and, bring in a little bit of the more general public or people who have an interest in that underlying topic.
So sort of like we do have an author. I don't know if she's here today, but she writes about foster care, and she's been in foster care for a lot of time. So you're talking about making sure your memoir can target a very specific niche. So
yeah, like that specifically is good, just because there are, a publicist would be happy to hear that, because that's those people I can reach out to.
Yeah, and there may and also there may not be a lot of books written to that genre.
Oh yeah, it's very underrepresented. Yeah.
So piggybacking on that similar question with respect to nonfiction memoirs, if you have a book that has, like, say, a lot of color photographs, diagrams, things of that nature, what type of publisher or what concerns should they look at when they are generating that manuscript, generating that artwork? Are there certain things they need to be concerned with now as they're generating it?
Something that Elliot says all the time that I always echo is any type of image, whether it be a photograph or a graph, it should be there to enhance the text in some way.
Okay.
So be choosy. Don't throw in everything, but if it does enhance the text and, provide your reader with a better picture of what you're trying to say, then great. And to always make sure that you are getting high resolution images, because we do run into a problem when they tell us they have that, and then we get to the layout stage and our layout designer will say, well, this will only print to be about 1/2 inch big. So just keep in mind high resolution everything for images, because then we can do whatever we want with them.
If your images are larger and your diagrams are larger, does that affect the size of the book? Obviously, but does that possibly affect the selling potential? The fact that it's a larger book, it tends to cost more to print, color versus black and white. Are those also things that you should be, aware of?
I mean, with high resolution just means that we can make it whatever size we want in the book. So if we have a 6x9 book, we can, fill the page or do half or a quarter, whatever it demands. And larger books, so you can get like 8x10, 8.5x11, or technically oversized books if you go beyond that, tend to be art focused books or photography books, or children's books are generally 8.5x11. And we recently did a book called Chasing the Dream, which had 300 plus images in it, but because that was about the American space program, coming from a retired Boeing scientist and NASA scientist. So that had, many, many, many images, and that was an 8x10, and the clarity was good enough that we felt comfortable with that size. And it wasn't, an 800-page book because of that. We still kept it reasonable.
Remember, things that you get off of the internet, off the web, are almost always low resolution, and they won't work. And if they do, then they come out to be very, very small, and again, won't achieve what you're trying to do.
Okay, cool. So we had a question from one of our members regarding, hypothetically, you've already self-published on Amazon through KDP, and then maybe they want to come back to someone like you guys. Is that frowned upon? Is that kind of a toxic? We've been told by publishers that they're not interested in acquiring or helping out people who've already, quote unquote, found their audience with the book that they've released. Is that true or not? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that or dispel any of those rumors.
We've got to decide what their goals are. What are they trying to achieve? And they really have to let us know who their audience is. And then at that point, if we decide that it makes sense to proceed, then we have to come up with some reasons on how we're going to capture that market.
Do you know, like, maybe it's not necessarily speaking for Peanut Butter Publishing, but do you know if that is true in general? Like when you're hobnobbing at bars and having cocktails, do they look down upon books that maybe have already been self-published? Do you know, just in the industry general? Do you know that?
Well, we've been successful where we've done significant sales where a traditional publisher will see that, and they usually know what's doing well, and they've come in to buy the rights to it. But it's all, I don't mean to beat this to death, but it's all in promoting. It's all in getting out there and letting people know your manuscript or your book exists. Otherwise, the chances of going in to a bookstore and browsing and trying to, you've got a better chance at winning at the lottery than you do at selling a book.
I think that's a great lead into the core, maybe, of the marketing questions that we've had submitted. Maybe we can have two-parter here, but we're in the middle of the pandemic. Not many people are going into those bookstores. Most of them are doing their purchasing, it looks like, online. What can we do right now as authors and promoters to get that word out? What are you seeing that's successful? What are you seeing that authors are doing to generate revenue or to garner interest?
Can you give me an example of a book that you would be interested in? And let me see if we can't come up with just a quick, ideas for you. But just to ask us in general, that it's too general a question.
Okay, so let's just imagine I have, say, a fantasy book, epic fantasy. I'm an epic fantasy writer, kind of Lord of the Ringsy, George R.R. Martin type of book. What could I do right now to, get my name out there, to promote myself?
So there are social media avenues where you have different groups that support that specific area. Make sense?
Yeah. Are maybe in general, like, how do you? Yes, you can do social media, but we're not allowed to go into a lot of Facebook groups and spam our book. We're not allowed to go do those type of things. Are you talking a lot about like asking to be featured as a promotional book within a fantasy group, go out and
Oh,
do blog press
absolutely.
tours, things of that
Yeah,
nature?
you got to get to the front of the line. Whatever you can do
Okay.
to do what you need to do. So if like we're doing a cookbook right now,
Okay.
and the cooking magazines, we've sent it out to all of them. We just want one of them to give us a small bit of space, and if it happens that we hit it at the right time where they're featuring uh, main courses or appetizers or something like that, and our book is all about appetizers, then we're going to get a lot of space. And if we get it in one publication, well, the other publications see, and often they're not far behind in promoting or mentioning the book.
And
But the
it's
whole,
important to have a really like healthy blend between traditional media and the more modern form it's taking, which is social media, websites, blogs, podcasts, things like that that are um, as audience focused as possible is always great. But you can be a little bit more general when you do lean towards traditional media. If, let's say, you are NPR, radio, in press, journals, things like that, we've seen a lot more success when that blend has happened. Because people, it seemed recently to me, have been investing a lot more in the author. And what they're willing to do. Like one of our publicists we worked with has been specifically talking about Twitter and podcasts have become such a huge thing for authors, and just being able to put a face to the book, which wasn't as important 20 years ago, but has become a lot more adamant now, and it at least gives you a more direct connection with your readers, which in a time specifically with COVID, when connection is so valued, it is an opportunity now to take advantage of that as much as you can to get your content out there. So a healthy blend of traditional and new media is just an avenue of success, and it develops your brand as an author, and whatever level you want to take that to.
Okay. Piggybacking on what you just said there, one of the techniques that we like to push a lot of our members to do is to find that community, to build that community. And we do that mainly through email lists, a lot of the list building strategies that are out there, capturing those people. Do you see the authors that you guys are supporting focusing a lot on building their own little community of individuals, whether that's through YouTube, podcasting, email, things of that nature as the main focus, or is it still going out and trying to get, Cooking Digest to write an article about you? Are you seeing a lot more success carving out your own space versus trying to get into somebody else's space?
Well, it seems like you can't really get into somebody else's space until you've carved out your own,
Okay.
because like the cooking magazine or whatever is more likely to pick you up if they see that you have either an established following or just even an established image of some kind, or that your manuscript or any if you have any other work has been consumed, and or if you are a certain quote unquote expert in something, or just have new information to share that would boost their publication in any way, that's helpful too. It's like you become a resource for them and they become a resource for you. I found that a lot of press has kind of been leaning towards that as well. Just kind of you don't just sign up and get it. Like a more relationship building has been successful in advertising recently.
So piggybacking on other influencers, or influencers piggybacking on the thing that you've carved out. Is that kind of the idea there?
And
Okay.
like even this group that you guys have is already a resource, just consuming information, getting it out there. So and so talks to so and so. It's even a small base like this. You can piggyback onto something greater depending on what it is.
You have you guys seen a large? I know in the last decade or so we've seen a shift to digital books, but I think Elliot alluded that there's been kind of a move back to physical books. Can you guys talk a little bit about if there's still a little tension there, or if there's a general flow in one direction or the other?
Well, if you're going to go initially with physical books, I usually attempt to discourage people from then publishing at the same time electronic book. It seems to me that now we're not talking about book on demand, because book on demand is something that is really at the bottom of the scale when they just produce books when they need it. But if you have built up an inventory of traditionally printed books, then we encourage you to sell those first. Then once those have been moved, then come in and possibly do an electronic book. Or when 80% of those traditional books have been moved, to do electronic books, so that you can get some additional promotion by announcing an electronic version of it. But I discourage people from launching them both at the same time. Most books, depending on who your audience is, and you've got to be really well defined who you're writing your story to. You'll be able to ascertain, you'll be able to find information a little bit about, are they selling more electronic versions or traditional version? And then you can go accordingly. But most of the time, almost all the time, it should be traditional books.
Do you guys see any of the authors that you guys are supporting or have supported focusing a lot on paid traffic through, say, Amazon, AMS ads, or Facebook advertising, or any of the other various platforms such as YouTube or Twitter? Have you seen a surge in that type of author spend in order to reach new readers or new influencers?
We attempt to discourage that because there's so much publicity that is available if you promote it properly and position it properly and know who their audiences are, that we do have authors that have, that spend advertising money, but personally, I think you do better spending money on a publicist to just go out and professionally get you exposure.
So maybe could you talk a little bit about a publicist? I know one of the authors in our group who's a romance writer has used sort of a publicist type of firm to help get her book out there. Maybe could you talk a little bit about what they do, what they require, and what could an author see using a publicist?
Well, okay, so romance book though, could you give me the angle in which they're promoting the book?
I don't know the details of how they used the book or promoted it. I know there was a lot of advertising dollars that were spent to get the book out there. I think also getting the physical book into bloggers' hands, I think, was part of that as well. So it was kind of a multifaceted promotion, but I don't know of all the micro details about it. I only know that she used it. But maybe you could speak to what a publicist that you guys use would, what would they do? How would they, go about it?
Daniel, do you have the email that we sent out just the other day to an author?
Yeah, so we have one of the main publicists we work with. She has, just this one sheet where she kind of sums up what a publicist does. So they create plans that are catered to your manuscript, create a media list that is also catered to your manuscript and your manuscript's audience, So as most relevant to your work and you as an author as possible. Press releases, media alerts, press kit materials, pitching new stories to whatever media is appropriate for your book, whether that be traditional or new media, and leaning on their established contacts in the market, whether that be journalists, and then she also helps develop social media, coaching on interviewing, public speaking, and on-camera presentations, because she in particular specializes in that. And let's see, arrange and flesh out talking points for press visits, interviews, appointments, and press conferences. So she specifically is working with one of our authors who has leaned pretty heavy on media because it was had a charitable background to it. So, working on the in-person presence and getting those opportunities. But just to, sum it up quickly, a publicist is just there to kind of point you in the right direction, make sure you're not spending money just to spend money, and actually get it focused on something that makes the most sense for your manuscript. Because I see a general pitfall being, you put your manuscript out there, whether that be on Amazon or just in general, and then it just gets lost in the shuffle. So a publicist's job is to make sure you don't get lost in the shuffle, and to not put you at the front of the line specifically, but to make sure you're at the front of the appropriate line and not wasting your time in one you don't need to be standing in. So just someone to help you with that, and also let you focus on being the author, because I feel like, especially in today's day and age, we get this pressure to wear so many different hats, and it can be so hard to do everything. So he or she will make your life easier when it comes to the marketing and publicity side of things.
Oh, awesome. Does the publicist do they recommend kind of a large bang at the beginning, or are they pushing more for the slow and steady over a long period of time? What are they looking for with book launches these days?
Really working on what you already have and teaching you how to utilize what you already have, so that your base can be established and developed and kind of fine-tuned. And then so a little bit of a slower start to make sure you can have a big launch, because a mistake is that people try to launch early and they don't take advantage of a launch the way they can if it was more organized and a lot more focused. So I would say slower, and getting that preliminary stuff done with you, and then working up to a bigger bang, and then what comes after that to reaching out to bigger players.
Okay. So with respect to maybe the total package of getting your manuscript finished, covers, the initial promotion, things like that, what's the dollar figure that, you don't have to do exact, obviously we know it varies, but like, what are people spending these days to launch that, either a nonfiction book or a fiction book? Do you maybe just ballpark order of magnitude?
Okay, so publicity is different than the covers and the editing and the layout and things like that. So publicity would be a sum, very well defined before you hired a publicist. Because I've had clients that spend very little money on publicity, and we've had authors who've spent an enormous amount on publicity. It's part of that package that you've got to stop and think about how much you're going to invest in your new manuscript, in your new business. And then you can figure out exactly how much you should be spending based on what we have in each one of the specific areas.
Maybe to piggyback on what you just said there, when you referred to it as a business, is that how you want the authors who come through you to think of it, that this is a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, that type of thing with the writing the book?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, this is a new investment. It happens to be all about your work, but you've got to look at it as a business. Otherwise, I promise you, your chances of running out of money in the middle of the product or the middle of the project is very significant. So you got to think through where we're starting, the middle part, and the end part. Remember, we always have money being generated if we're successful in selling books. But you should know what you're going to capitalize this book, or otherwise you don't have it very much under control.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that your time is valuable, and that your time and money are valuable, and especially when you're working in the arts, whether that be writing or music or whatever, sometimes that can be lost unless you really approach it as a business and something that you're going to like really invest in. So the reason that we're tentative about usually providing ballpark figures right off the bat is that we don't use packages or templates. We are completely custom, and it depends on what the author's goals are and what they're looking to produce. It's like, are we producing 5,000 full color hardback books and we're wanting to launch this to the whole world, or is this more on a regional basis, a just regular black and white novel, high quality of course, but and then working backwards from there. So usually on our consultations we will ask authors what they have in mind first, be like, these are my goals, this is what I want to do, this is what I was looking to invest in my project, and we'll encourage them to look at it as a business. How much do you want to invest in this new endeavor? And then kind of work backwards from there and kind of tell them what reality is and point them in the direction if we think we could do it for more or less or whatever, or to kind of change our expectations to work within that budget if it tends to lean on the smaller side, or point them in a direction if we're not the best option. We don't hesitate to do that either.
No, understood. So with respect to that, do you provide like statistics or metrics or data from the industry? If say, hey, I'm a horror writer and I come into your office and you're like, hey, Mr. Matt, horror doesn't sell as much as say nonfiction or this and that. Do you guys provide that type of data to people to understand the genre numbers that maybe they don't know? Maybe I didn't ask that right. Do you guys have like metrics of the industry that helps inform authors to understand what they need to be doing?
I guess not really like specific data, more like experience, mostly with Elliot having been doing this for so long, and then what we've seen recently, and then what they're specifically doing. We kind of look for, we always want authors to be able to look beyond just can I give you my book and do something with it? I don't care what happens. Like, we really encourage that author involvement.
Okay. Yeah, no, understood.
They have to have
every question.
There's two things that if you're going to be a successful writer, you want to have in your repertoire of really getting it well understood what you're trying to achieve in your writing. I ask each author, I need to know what we're trying to accomplish, or otherwise we're useless to them. But if they can really tell me what our goals are, and if they can really tell me what my audience is, so that these two items fit together, then we can go looking for the people who would be interested in that type of genre. Make sense?
I think it does. That,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, absolutely no. It doesn't. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I understand that. Are you seeing authors coming to you, whether they're nonfiction or fiction, that one of the best advices that we always hear is to write the next book? Do you encourage people to sit down and think about, okay, you're writing this book, you're doing a business, you're going to be spending money. You need to think about writing another book or another book to help increase the chances of,
Oh, absolutely not. Okay. I don't want them writing another book. I need them to totally focus on this book, because if we don't do this right, the chances of another book greatly diminish. And I want 100% focus on this one to get the attention of the world, so that they'll want to then go out and buy more that you have written.
Okay. So do you discourage like
Oh yeah,
certain genres, say fantasy, urban fantasy, they tend to be serialized, multiple books, trilogies, however many. And a lot of authors are going into these stories understanding that they have 3 or 4 books in this storyline. When they come to you and they say, well, here's my book 1, I have a 2, 3, and 4 already ready to go. You tell them to hold off. Let's make this 1 successful before you put any more money or effort into 2, 3, and 4.
absolutely, because I've got to make sure that 1 stands alone and that it is capable of creating interest in additional books, so that the reader will want to, just by the way the author has led the story, they've got one story, but boy, they'd really be enthusiastic in the next one.
Okay. Maybe with respect to, I'm going through all their questions. I'm just trying to see if there's anything
Sure.
here. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to break it up. I think it looks like Danielle hopefully is answering Sydney's question in the chat. It looks like she's doing that right now.
I was gonna ask you to ask Elliot so he could give a better answer. I was like, I have a guesstimate, but I don't want to.
It's another Elliot. It's another guesstimate question, which I know you love. Typical memoir with a very specific angle, who understands who she's targeting, that has a national distribution goal. What are they looking for in terms of investment? That's the question. I know you slid by my last investment question.
I promise you, I can spend all the money you got.
It feels like there's endless. So what do I have to invest? Yeah, maybe.
If you want to get so what is the subject matter?
Let's just say it's a memoir of a very specific angle. She's typing right now. Abandoned children.
Here in America or in the rest, any place else in the world?
She's typing. U.S.
And from what point of view is it being written?
First person.
Okay, so this actually happened to this person. So it's.
Yep.
All right. And who are they writing this to? Who's their audience for this book?
She's typing right now. I'll repeat it for those who are watching on the feed. Other abandoned children and adults who've been emotionally abandoned.
Okay, great. So we know that in every state in the union, they have emotional support groups for this. They have abandoned children. They have adopted children who've been abandoned. They have just extraordinary support groups for this. Author, is that correct?
Yeah, she's typing again.
Okay.
Okay, that's develop contact. So what she's saying is that's a way to develop audience and contacts. Is that correct?
Okay. So the next step is let's spend our energy in developing those. So we're reaching our core market of who we want to tell our story to. We can't be all things to all people because most people, aren't interested or can't relate to that. And so what I would encourage is let's go after those people that are emotionally impacted by this. Now, once we've got the initial market we fulfill that, then we can start. We've got a good base. Then we can start and roll it out to a little bit more general uh, public. But if you're just going to start and try to run it out to the general public, uh, you're talking about huge amounts of dollars you're going to have to invest in publicity to make them interested in your project. So I always encourage people to start small and build. Then we have a platform that we can do a second book on.
Okay.
But at this point, until I get this first book really positioned, that's where I want my author spending his energy or her energy.
Forgive me, but you would then sell the working title for this book is The Diary of an Abandoned Child. So you would sell this book to the small group that was developed first from those contacts at various social service support group type organizations, and then expand that to a general audience if it did well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and you think about the audience that you're talking about, huge. I mean, we're talking a couple 100,000 people easily.
Is the general audience?
No, it's a specific audience.
As the specific audience, okay.
How many here in the state?
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Well, wait, correct me if I'm wrong here. How many people in this state do you know that are involved in some kind of support group for this?
No, see, I haven't done my research. I don't know.
Okay, there are a lot because it's a big, abandonment is a huge topic.
Yeah.
Well, so you've got a significant market, but let's just focus on writing it to one group. We'll then expand it as the interest is known.
Okay.
And then we can go to every single state in the union. Plus, we have all the social media and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Elliot, would you expect, so say someone like Sydney, I'm just piggyback on her use case here. She's going to be doing a lot of research. She's going to be writing a lot of books. She's going to be connecting with a lot of people. If it's not just first person, but also doing generalized research, she's going to be touching potential influencers along that way. Would you encourage writers who say are doing nonfiction like this to engage with influencers while the manuscript's being generated in order to establish that relationship?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, it makes sense to, broaden as much as you can to get as many people interested in what you're doing. And no, a lot of times using the book as a vehicle, if it's really well put together, I mean, you've got properly edited, you've got it looks professional. That's going to open up a lot of doors for you.
But I'm maybe talking about the standpoint of, okay, if you have an influencer, say there's an abandonment Facebook group, person who runs a large forum or something of that nature, showing them that you're a real human being, not a grifter, establishing that will help you get your foot in the door and maybe ahead of a bunch of other manuscripts that are sitting there waiting to be reviewed. That's maybe what I was asking, if you would encourage or not.
Wait, repeat the question one more time.
Not a problem. So if, say, for example, there's an abandonment forum or a website blog or whatever that nature is, and then she's doing research and she maybe will target that influencer to garner, research or information, and in doing so establishes a relationship that may get her ahead of the line in promotion. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Okay.
But I don't understand. Look, you might want to go to that influencer and interview them for the book. Boy, now you've got somebody who's definitely going to promote you if you have, put him in the proper light.
Yeah. With respect to the manuscripts, continuing with this great example that we've got here, what other would you encourage people to create additional content on top of the manuscript? So, for example, she goes to this person, interviews them, maybe she records it, maybe she has a transcript available, a Q&A, and then posts that on her website. Are these important things to include with the manuscript as
Of
like
course,
additional?
yes, because I'm making the assumption that she's there to want to educate as one of her goals. She wants to teach people. She wants
Exactly.
to support people. She wants to motivate people. She wants to whatever her goals are, any material that she can add to it to make her more of an expert in that field is, it seems to me, very welcomed.
With respect to promotion and things of that nature, how often does, say one of your nonfiction authors go out and give talks? How often do you encourage them to do that, to get out and speak about their topic?
It seems to me that the author who is writing about abandonment would want to become a recognized expert um, in this field. So she'd want to get in front of people in support groups or things like that, or through Zoom or whatever is appropriate in this new norm.
Yeah.
To let her, to be able to achieve. Remember, we got goals that we're doing this for.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to really understand what her goals are. What's
Great.
she doing this for? 49 years of doing this, I've never heard a wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you got to sit down and stop and think about that.
Justifying my existence doesn't count as a goal, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. But
It was
you're
a
there
joke.
to help people. You're there to share your story. I mean, I abandonment is just, well, you know how tough it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who can do that. And there's a lot of people out there who don't read books, but still need your help.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If they can relate to you, if you can go in front of a social service type of environment, you can, you'd be surprised how much influence, what you can contribute to making life better for them.
And I do have some street cred in that regard. I spent 6 years at Real Change writing about social issues, which often involved writing about the root causes of the reasons people were homeless. So I have some background in educational writing, but I'll divide myself out now. Thank you for your input.
No,
Okay,
thank
well,
you.
remember, behind every great writer is a greater editor. And that's one of the, editors. Danielle contributes a whole lot in looking at a manuscript and how to make it more fuller to the people you're trying to reach, your audience. And that's why you've got to stop before you start writing to figure out who you're writing this for.
Okay. Maybe Elliot, Danielle, if you guys could answer one of the big pressing questions that we always get in our group. We'll go out and do a lot of outreach ourselves, and so we interact with authors out in the wild as well. The issue of being an introvert, struggling to talk about your book to people, whether you're selling at an event or you're talking about it at like an interview. How do you help, or maybe advice you can give people to kind of break out of their shell and get beyond the keyboard and being able to talk to people. It seems to be a big problem or a source of resistance, the Stephen Pressfield resistance idea of getting out there and doing the work.
We find just shooting them is the easiest.
Okay. So putting them out to pasture. I see.
Yeah. If I can't get you to be confident in what you have to say, then people aren't going to want to listen to you. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong again, but you're an expert. You're taking time to specifically detail some kind of agenda in your life, some kind of action in your life. You've got to realize that you have value. We might not impact 1 billion people. We might impact 5. But I got to tell you, if you can really make life better for 5 people or 10 people or a small amount, that's still a major contribution to the betterment of the world. And that's usually why people want to write, to make this a better world or to teach them something.
Yeah, and we always want to, highlight the strengths of the author. And, if we have somebody who's extremely introverted and shy, if, something a little bit less, face-to-face, like a podcast or a blog or, getting their book on their website or bookstores do tend to make sense for people that are generally more introverted. It's just selling in a bookstore is very, very difficult, just because you have to sell to them at a discount, and chances of them browsing and just picking up your book are very slim unless you're willing to put yourself out there. But I will revert back to the publicist a little bit, because their job is to, use your strengths to their advantage while also acknowledging those weaknesses and, what would be best appropriate with what you're trying to do. It is unfortunate that a lot of the times it seems like, the loudest person is listened to, but there is still a way to refine your approach that in such a way that you can maximize the potential of what you're willing to put out there.
And that would be true for both nonfiction and fiction, you would agree?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're at an hour, and I want to be respectful for both of you guys' time. I really appreciate it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you again.
No problem. I want to. I'm sorry. We're at about an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. I'll ask anybody who has some additional questions to maybe toss them into the chat or come off mute and go ahead and ask that real quick. Otherwise, we can let Danielle and Elliot go back to their busy lives.
I have about another 20 minutes. Danielle, what do you have?
I've got a little bit longer, not much. I'm on the east side of the state right now and going to drive back to the west side. So I'll be out pretty quick. I've been trying to answer everyone's questions in the chat as best I can to kind of, put things in writing that are a little bit harder. I did put my email address in there if anybody has any in-depth follow-up stuff. But yeah, any questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
I think we've run through most of the questions. Go ahead, Elliot. If you had something to say.
I've been doing this for so long, and this industry has been very good to me, and so I'm always willing to take some time if people have questions, or if people 2 or 3 want to call me up. And I'd be happy to answer, point you in the right direction, if that can be any help.
Okay, great. There was a quick question here from Joseph. He said, Joseph he and his wife do illustrated books. He said, doing readings or video interviews of the book, is that recommended? Would that hurt sales, showing the illustrated book as you read it? Like maybe I'm thinking like on YouTube as an example.
When you say illustrated book,
I'm sorry, a children's book.
Oh, okay.
I personally think that stuff is great. One of our authors, her book was it was a children's book, but the background of it was specifically written for kids who struggle with anxiety. So she actually did a virtual reading for Seattle Children's Hospital, and she got a lot of return from that, like appreciation and interest from parents and kids, things like that. That's the thing with an illustrated book, in my opinion, is you're showing the illustrations, but children's books hold their value so much in the physical form, since those are ones read over and over again. So I don't see it as a downfall, but I don't know what your feelings are, Elliot, but that's just what I think.
Look, selling a children's book is exceedingly difficult because, first of all, you have to appeal to the parent or grandparent or whoever is going to buy the book. And then the second thing is you've got to appeal to the child who's going to be participating in the book. So I find that a lot of times, if you can get in front of schools where you can do readings or talk to teachers like that who are interested in your subject matter. We had this one, which was the high anxiety for military kids when their parents leave. If you can get in front of those audiences of children at schools, that's pretty effective. And then you get the teachers to start talking about your book to other teachers who have, similar classroom environments. Then you can build that way.
Okay, I think that's all we got. I've asked people to include any more questions, but I think we might be done here. If anybody has any other comments or whatnot, I'd like to thank Elliot, you, and Danielle for taking the time out to answer all these questions. It's been really illuminating, and I think you helped a lot of people here, especially the example of the abandonment children that we walked through. I think can be used for both nonfiction and fiction to just consider the questions you have to do. So I greatly appreciate you guys both for being here.
Thank you so much.
We certainly hope we've made your life a little easier today. How's that?
Yeah, more information is always the better. Yeah.
Hard to navigate the world of publishing, but so
it is.
We hope we provided you guys with some good info. And Sydney, your project does sound great. I must say it piqued my interest. I want to read this. But, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay. Well, then, not being familiar, what do I do?